Hey guys, I just want to go over this timeline that Jesus gave us for the very, very end and show you how it all ties in to what is actually happening right now, like literally right now. We're in the thick of it. So, the first thing that he says is going to happen at the very, very end is the abomination of desolation. And I showed in my other videos that this happened August 2nd, 2012. The next thing that he says is going to happen is the rapture. In Matthew 24:15, he says, "Let those who shall be praised be saved by flight by the carrying away after you see this." I showed that in my other videos. But Mark 13:14 also says that. It says, "When you see the abomination of desolation, histemi." This word histemi means escape and safety. Remember in one of my other videos, I had talked about this scripture right here, Ephesians 6:11-13, which someone had tried to prove says that there's no rapture, but in fact it proves there is a rapture. It says, "Put out of every one of God, that for their sakes or your sakes you may be able to have permission to escape in safety." But then it says down here that there are some people that will not escape in safety. It's the opposite of escape in safety. So there's two different groups. There's a group that's taken in the rapture, and there's a group that stays on the earth through the tribulation. And I believe that the group that stays on the earth is the two witnesses, the two churches that stay on the earth during the tribulation. But I'll get into that later. The point is, in Mark 13, this is the same word, histemi, as what we saw down here in Ephesians 6-11. This word right here is histemi. Escape and safety stand before the judges. Okay, histemi, escape and safety. So again, when you see the abomination, be saved by flight by the carrying away, and escape and safety. Totally different words, but they mean the same thing. And again, something to the effect of those who do not have permission will be bound or fastened. So some will escape, some will not. They'll be bound. Luke 17:37 says, "Where, Lord?" And he says, "Where the heavenly stars are, the eagles we gather together." So they are given wings of a great eagle that they might fly into their place as protection from the serpent. Now, if this was at the end, they wouldn't need protection from the serpent because the serpent is bound at the end. So for protection from the serpent, they are taken into the place God prepared for them for 3.5 years. Well, remember, God prepared for them a place that they may go where He is. And it says right here, "I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, you may be also." So the place that He's preparing for our protection is where He is, and He is in heaven. He is in heaven. So, and also the mountain, it talks about the mountain here, fleeing to the mountains. The mountain is in heaven, the mountain of God. Moses went up to the mountain of God. The mountain, the great and high mountain of God, is in heaven. It's in heaven, descending out of heaven from God. "Why do you say to me, fly like a bird to your mountain?" King David says, "Why do you say to me that?" Because it is code for the rapture. Because this is the rapture. That where God is, you will be for 3.5 years. That the bride will come down out of heaven at the end. At the end, the bride comes down out of heaven. Why would the bride be coming down out of heaven at the end unless the bride went up to heaven 3.5 years before the end? So that's what the timeline is. The certain people are raptured and taken to the heavens 3.5 years before the end of the tribulation. The tribulation starts and lasts for 3.5 years. Okay, and the bride is up in heaven at that time. Also, I wanted to point out that we are not given a specific time period from the abomination of desolation to the rapture. There's no specific time period. We're only told that it's in that season. So Matthew 24:21 parallels Daniel 12:1 because they're talking about a tribulation such as never was since there was a nation even to that same time. A tribulation such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time. So we're talking about the same thing. Well, if we go to Daniel 12:1, it says, "At that time thy people shall escape. I've shown that in my other videos. But if we look at this word time, it actually means season. So it's not saying immediately. It's not saying that immediately after the abomination of desolation, or immediately at the abomination desolation, the rapture will happen. No, it's saying in that general season. Because if it meant to say immediately, it would say immediately. Because at the end of the tribulation, it does say, and it's in Matthew, and I don't have the scripture right here, but in Matthew, it does say immediately after the tribulation, the sun will go dark and the moon will go dark. But that's giving us a time period clue, because there's a solar and lunar eclipse that I'm going to show you right after this time period. So, general time frame from this to this, it's in that season, it's in that general time period, and the tribulation is after the rapture, and the rapture is after this, so in the general time period. So, where will we be taken to? I want to just go over that really quick before I go into the time frame. There's no question that we will be taken to the uppermost layer of the earth, which is the exosphere. It's where the satellites orbit. That's where we're being taken. And how do we know that? Because it says at the end, after the tribulation, he will gather his elect from heaven. And he also says from the four winds. So not just from heaven, but from the four winds. Well, where are the four winds? We can go look here. And he shall send his angels to gather the elect from the four winds. So where are the four winds? They are the four corners of heaven, and this word anemos comes from this word right here, which literally means the atmospheric region. So he's saying he's gathering together the elect from the atmospheric region, or the uppermost part of the earth, the uppermost part of heaven, in heaven, the uppermost part of earth in the atmosphere. Okay, well, what is the uppermost part of the earth in the atmosphere? These are the layers of the atmosphere right here. And the uppermost layer of the atmosphere is the exosphere, and that's where the satellites orbit. So these are the layers right here. When he's saying the uppermost part of the earth, he's not talking about the mountains. He's not talking about the Himalayas. And those people that try to say that's the rapture. There are some people that try to say that after the tribulation, that's the rapture. It's not. Why would he only gather people from the uppermost part of the earth and leave all the rest? Why would he only gather people from the Himalayas? That doesn't make any sense. That's not true. That's because he's not gathering everybody on the earth at the rapture. He's gathering everybody from up here. At the end, he's gathering everybody that's up here in the exosphere, that's up here with God in the place that he prepared for them. Think about it. If God is coming from outer space, the uppermost layer of earth is here. The uppermost part of earth is here. It's from God's perspective. It's not from our perspective. It's from God's perspective. So the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord. So from God's perspective, the uppermost part of earth is the top layer, the exosphere. And that's where the elect will be gathered from at the end, after the tribulation. Okay, so immediately after that 1260 days, we know that they will be taken up there, and they will stay up there for 1260 days, or 3.5 years. 1260 days is 3.5 years. And immediately after that time period, there will be a solar and lunar eclipse. So if we look on this timeline right here, there is a 1260 day period right here, a 3.5 year period right here that ends on August 31st, and the very next day is a solar eclipse, and 2 weeks later a lunar eclipse. So this very well could be that 3.5 period where those who are taken up to heaven, the heavenly abode is their safe place. They're being taken up to heaven for 3.5 years, and they return to earth right here. So they're not being removed from the earth. They're simply being taken to a safe place and then put back. That's all. Because this is what Jesus said was this right here. This final tribulation is the worst thing that will ever happen in all of history. In all of history, this is the worst thing that is going to happen. So it's going to be worse than the Crusades back here, worse than the Holocaust, worse than anything. And he says that there's a sign. There's a sign in the stars, in the configuration of the stars, that will tell you when this rapture is going to happen, and this rapture and this tribulation. Well, that sign happened right here, October 16th. The next time it happens is way, way out here in 2454, and the previous time was way back here in 1570. And there was a cluster of those back here I found interesting because that was the time period when the Vatican admits they murdered all those people. There's a cluster of those signs. So there's a sign right there. We just had it, that this tribulation is about to start. So when is this rapture going to happen? Well, all we get are clues. We're not told exactly. We're just given clues, and these are the clues. A great sign will appear in the stars before it happens, Revelation 12:1-5. That happened October 16th, and I've shown you that in other videos, but I'll show you again. I mean, this is 244 BC. These are all the possible signs. And I showed you that the most exact, this was the most recent one, and the most exact one happens in 2012, and it's right here. So this is the sign right here that Revelation 1-5 talks about, and it happened in 2012, okay? He will be delayed. Yes, he was. We all thought maybe here, but he was delayed. So it says that in Matthew 25. It's not going to happen when you think it's going to happen. It'll happen at midnight, or in other words, one of these things, because this word right here means all of these different things. It will happen at the last trumpet. Well, this word right here means all of these different things. So it doesn't have to be the Feast of Trumpets. It could be the last swelling of the sea, or the last trouble or quake. Well, if you think about it, if you look at this timeline, there have been a lot of troubles. Since here to here, there have been a lot of troubles. If this is the last trouble, then that could be what it's saying. There was no rapture here for those people, but there's a rapture at the last trouble. Not all of these troubles, not the Holocaust, but at the last trouble, because it's the worst tribulation out of all of them. So at that one, there will be a rapture. But pray that it's not in the winter. So those are our clues. And on March 20th, it's first day of spring. It's 1260 days before the solar and lunar eclipse. It's 7 months after the Idol of Terror. So remember, Moses ascended on the 7th day. The people shall ascend up on the 7th day. And it's also in the 5th year. 2013 is in the 5th year. In the 5th year, devour the fruit. Daniel's time period, his 7-year period, 2009 to 2016. 2013 would be the 5th year of that time period. So in the 5th year. It's also 3 months after the Monument 6 date. So on the 3rd day, it will be consumed on the 3rd day. On the 3rd day, he will raise us up to live in his sight. So I just wanted to share some of that with you, and I hope you guys are doing well, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye-bye.